Government Affairs Committee will now come to order. We'll begin by announcing that items 5 and item 7, both of those items will be continued through to our meeting on December 1st. That's item 5 and item 7. With that, we'll take up the items in order that they appear on the agenda with item 1.
Item 1 is a communication from the City Attorney and resolution relative to a request to destroy obsolete records from the Department of Building and Safety.
Hello, Councilman Todd Godowski from the City Clerk's Office, Records Management. Item 1 relates to some boxes from the Department of Building and Safety. They're mostly routine administrative records. Large number of them are routine filings that have to do with property condition applications from residents. We don't feel there's any historical value to these and recommend that they be disposed of.
Okay. And you followed all the proper procedures?
Yes, they've been reviewed by the department and by the city attorney.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody here to speak on item number 1? Item number 1 is before us. Public comment is open on item number 1. Public comment is now closed on item number 1. We'll hold that item. We're awaiting a quorum. So we'll go on to item number 2.
And item number 2 is another report regarding a request to destroy records from the Los Angeles Police Commission for the Los Angeles Police Department.
Thank you. This is a fairly large request, but a few of the documents are rather old, but most of them are routine, mostly some traffic records and routine investigative records. The bulk of them are more recent. Some of the older materials are of mug books and such, but not really something that we can release to an archives for viewing by the public, and not historical in that they don't really explain the investigative process or really show the history of the department in any way that we feel warranted their preservation. So again, we recommend that these be destroyed. They've been reviewed by the department and the city attorney.
How did we end up with boxes of information that date all the way back from 1938?
That's a good question. These are all located out at various precincts around the city. I think it's just, when they're not in the record center, things get shifted to the back of stock rooms, and I think we're just dealing with these precincts are running out of space and they're cleaning up.
Okay. Anybody here to make comment on item number 2? Public comment on item number 2 is now open. Seeing and hearing no one come forward on public comment on item number 2. Public comment on item number 2 is now closed. With that, we'll hold that item in the committee and bring it up later on in the meeting. Item number 3.
And that's a third report from the City Attorney and a resolution relative to destroying records from the City Clerk Election Division.
Elections.
This is a small number of items. They're mostly ballots from the 2005 election. Ballots are required to be kept for 6 months after the certification of the election. These are overdue for destruction. They are sealed. It would require a court order to review them. We recommend their destruction.
Okay. All right. We're on item number 3. Is there anybody here to make public comment on item number 3? We do not have any public comment cards on item number 3. With that, we will now close public comment on item number 3. So with that, noticing that we have a quorum, as Councilmember Perry's president, we just closed public comment on item number 3. So with that, item number 3, issue of destroying these documents, the committee approves the city attorney report and resolution on item number 3. At this time, we'll go back to item number 1 and item number 2. We'll hold them concurrently for a vote. We have items 1 and 2 before us relative to destroying of documents. All procedures seem to have been followed, and we're at the proper place to make that determination. So with that, items 1 and 2 are approved, the city attorney report and resolution. Now we're on item number 4.
And for clarification on item number 3, the city attorney report and resolution were approved also.
Correct.
Correct. And item number 4 is a report from the city administrative officer relative to the first construction projects report for fiscal year 2009-10.
Good afternoon. Alma Gibson with the CAO's office. Our office is submitting to you our first construction projects report for this fiscal year. It provides recommendations for funding adjustments related to the various city construction projects. These recommendations are needed to keep the projects on track. The adjustments, the financial adjustments, consist primarily on reimbursements to various city departments from general obligation bonds, the Capital Improvement Expenditure Program Fund, and from MICLA financing. Of the total $14.4 million that's being recommended in this report in transfers and appropriations, we are recommending $12.3 million in appropriations to GSD to perform construction work on various projects. Now again, these projects consist of police stations, fire stations, animal shelters, sanitation yards, the Figueroa Plaza capital improvements, CRA work, and seismic retrofit work to the CD14 neighborhood city hall. It also includes about $472,000 in transfers and reimbursements within various city funds, such as a reprogramming of $125,000 of Prop K monies to the Lincoln Heights project. And finally, it includes $1.6 million in estimated staff costs reimbursements from MICLA to various city departments for work to be performed on the public administration building. And this is for the first 6 months of this fiscal year. We now have representatives available to discuss any specifics on these projects on this report.
You have any questions?
No.
Okay. Okay. Our committee doesn't have any questions at this time. Is there anybody here from the public on item number 4? Anybody here for item number 4 for public comment? Public comment is open on item number 4. Seeing and hearing no one come forward on item number 4, public comment is now closed on item number 4. So with that, the committee approves the CAO report recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We moved items 5 and 7 to the December 1st meeting. So with that, we now move to item number 6.
Item number 6 is a report from the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to city support of congressional action to name the final health care legislation in honor of Senator Ted Kennedy pursuant to Resolution Koretz-Alarcon.
Okay.
Brian Randall, Chief Legislative Analyst Office. Before you today is Resolution Koretz-Alarcon, introduced September 1st, 2009, which notes that Senator Edward Kennedy of Massachusetts was known for introducing numerous legislation addressing such issues as immigration, civil rights, education, health care, and AIDS care. The resolution notes that Senator Kennedy served 9 terms in the United States Senate, making him the 3rd longest serving senator in U.S. history before he passed away on August 25th, 2009. The resolution advises that federal legislation regarding health care reform currently being considered by Congress should bear his name to recognize his commitment to health care reform. The CLA recommends support of Resolution Koretz-Alarcon, which would support congressional action naming the final health care bill in honor of Senator Kennedy, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Good. No, it's a great idea. He definitely was a champion. He actually was very close to the founder of Northeast Valley Health Corporation in the San Fernando Valley that served families that didn't have health insurance and families that were low income. It was actually, my family was one of the first families to utilize that facility. It still exists today, and I remember the founder actually used to talk fondly about Ted Kennedy. When he used to go to Washington, D.C., he would get access directly to the senator, didn't even have to make an appointment, although he did many times. But if he ever found himself out there, he would pop in, ask to speak to the senator, and the senator would make time for him. And the senator was actually the champion for that program, even though the senator represented a state on the other side of the country. He actually understood this issue, was committed to it, and actually rendered tremendous support and service to many communities throughout the country. I think it's a wonderful idea. So, seeing no more questions from the committee, is there anybody here to speak on item number 6? Seeing and hearing no one come forward for public comment on item number 6. Public comment on item number 6 is now closed. So with that, the committee adopts the resolution. Thank you. Item number 8.
And item number 8 is a Board of Police Commissioners report relative to renaming the 2710 West Temple Street facility in honor of Police Officer Randall D. Simmons.
Okay. I just wanted to understand, it's my understanding that various facilities throughout the city were recommended to be named after Randall Simmons. But this one here has to do with the facility at 2710 West Temple. Who's here from the staff that could shed some light on this?
I wanted to say something.
Okay. So what is the recommendation at this time? Because the commission actually forwarded this. They took their action.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Brennan. I'm the facilities manager for the LAPD. The recommendation came about for this particular facility as Randall Simmons was the first Metro officer to have been killed in the line of duty. This building will be the new Metropolitan Division headquarters when it is rehabilitated and renovated as part of the Prop 2 Phase 2. I'm sorry, Prop Q Phase 2.
Just two questions. One, I know there was a motion that went to committee to develop a process for naming city facilities. That's number one. And number two, when this arose, I also added in a motion, and I had asked the former chief's office to at least speak to Mrs. Simmons and see if she was even open or amenable to this. And there's never been any indication to me that the department did that. You know, I think people were falling all over themselves at the time to be able to name something after Officer Simmons. And while I understand that, because it was an emotional, horrible occurrence, but I don't think anyone ever asked her what she thought. And do you have any indication that the department ever asked her what she thought?
I don't have any concrete evidence that that was the case. I was told that she had been consulted, but I can certainly go back and make sure that that is the case, and that
I'd like
should have certainly.
I'd like to see that documented, because
Absolutely.
The wishes of the family,
I think
come first and foremost, and then secondly, what are we going to do about having this coincide with development of a policy? Because we still don't have our policy in place. I don't know what to do about that other than to work with the chair of the committee and see whether or not this is going to track with the policy and the evolution of the policy, because these ad hoc efforts just don't always pan out.
I understand completely, ma'am.
There'd be some due diligence and a checklist that we go through.
Standardization.
Right, that's right, which includes asking the family. 'Cause when I raised it the first time, my comment was ignored. I actually talked to her about it at the time people were discussing it. She was consumed, obviously, with grief and just didn't want to even be bothered at the time. She's pretty easy to find.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, ma'am, that I think the wishes of the family should be tantamount
Yeah, and I'm not
in the
picking on you,
process.
I'm just
And
really
at the
wanting to
same time, as far as following the process,
Yeah,
that
process
is,
and, I think it's part of the process. I hope when we get to that point, part of that would include contacting the family and getting their input of anybody who you're considering naming a building after, if the person is deceased.
and if you would like to hold this in committee while we talk to the family,
Yes.
the facility itself is not going to be ready to be occupied probably for a couple of years.
Okay, all right, excellent. And the next item on the agenda is going to be the discussion of all the departments coming back to us with all of their processes and procedures. So what we'll do with item number 8 is once we go through public comment, we'll just hold it in committee. Is there anybody here for public comment on item number 8? We're on item number 8. Public comment is now open. Seeing and hearing no one come forward on item number 8 for public comment. Public comment is now closed on item number 8. We'll hold this item in committee and await the department's response to Councilmember Perry's questions, and also perhaps we'll hold it concurrent with the department's report on their procedures, formal procedures that they will be developing. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we're now on item number 9.
And item number 9 is a motion, Cardenas, Garcetti, Parks, Labange, relative to a moratorium on the naming or dedication of all city facilities and the development of a policy for the naming or dedication of all city facilities for council-controlled and proprietary departments.
Okay. Staff ready to come forward? When it comes to the naming of facilities, especially when we have anticipation of new facilities, newly constructed facilities, they don't tend to get constructed or erected within 10 days or even 10 months if we were lucky. They tend to take years. So that being the case, one of the things that I want all the departments that have facilities, that they would have input and or procedures developed for them to understand that they need to explain when they're fortunate to get a new facility or a completely renovated facility that would necessitate a potential for consideration of a naming of the facility, that they explain to the council during that process whether or not they've actually thought about what the naming of the facility should be, if any. There's no law that requires us to name facilities, but it's a custom and practice that happens throughout government and even on private facilities in many cases as well. So with that, that's one of the recommendations from this committee, that in each department's consideration, that they actually prepare to make sure that that's part of their checklist when they are fortunate enough to receive the opportunity to have a new facility with the potential for dedication, as to whether or not they've considered that, whether or not they have a name in mind, or if they're going to commence a process in order to arrive at such a name. Now, one of the things that I think it's important for each department to understand is that, for example, the fire department usually takes the lead on the naming of their facilities. The police department usually takes the lead on naming of their facilities. Some departments may not be as involved in. Department of General Services is very likely going to be the lead on making sure that those policies and procedures are actually developed and also followed on a case-by-case basis. So with that, could I have the person with GSD come forward, the appropriate person? You seem to be the default guy, Reggie.
Reggie Jones Sawyer, Department of General Services.
City Attorney Rep here, PD. Okay, so Reggie, when it comes to what I just outlined and what the motion talks about, that we really want the city to not frustrate themselves as departments, not frustrate the community, not frustrate the council and the electeds within the city with our ad hoc process. I'm calling it an ad hoc process. Not that it's bad, but it certainly isn't uniform. It certainly is something that lacks having structure. For example, in item 8, as was pointed out by Councilmember Perry, she happened to have direct conversation with the family member or the wife of the deceased, and it appeared that people had a wonderful idea, but there was no checklist as to whether or not the family had been consulted. So that's a perfect example of what should be on every department's checklist. So with that, Reggie, what do you recommend that we do, or what do you envision that the structure should be, how much of that should fall on GSD, how much of that should fall on, especially with our bigger departments, or more high-profile departments like fire and police. How much of that should really be within their purview, and how much of that should be within GSD's purview?
Well, when you look at naming buildings in general, and that also includes the proprietary,
Yeah.
to have one entity, and I'm going to use the word corral, fire, police, cultural affairs, because if it's historic, there's a historic designation, there's a process you have to go through. Libraries, I think the Library Commission may believe they have authority to name buildings. Public Works, even the street dedications of the medians. There's signs all over the city where we're naming
That's right.
different streets. All of that, not just facilities, should be considered. And then when you get into each proprietary, I'm sure Harbor, airports, and DWP believe they have the authority to name a building any way that they want. And I don't know what the charter said. If we throw in Rec and Parks, it becomes another entity. And so whether it's CLA or CAO, they probably should be the overarching lead on this, because they can basically bring all these entities together. General Services can serve on this committee as an impartial entity to give some input of what has been done in the past, because as you said, it's really done on an ad hoc basis. General Services, for example, never initiates for a name. It's generally the department that's the main user, or the entity that's going into the building. They have ideas, either past practices, on how they want to name them. The community will come forth to council members, make recommendations, and even that doesn't go through any kind of formal process. If you were to ask about the process, definitely what Councilwoman Perry is talking about, ensuring that even the family members that are there are even in agreement with what needs to be done, or contacting the person if they're living to see if they want that designation. But I guess more important, to have a process that should be uniform no matter what building or entity that we use. It should be uniform along all lines, and with probably the ultimate decision makers being mayor and council. And if it takes a year, that probably would be a good enough time so you can vet through the process of naming the building for that person to ensure that it is the appropriate building. I've even seen some buildings where we've gone ahead and want to name them for that building, and then the entities moved out, and now they're in another building. And so if we had done some more vetting, we wouldn't have done that. So you're absolutely right. There has to be a multi-stage approach. We need to make sure that every entity that has done this before talk about how they've done. And I think another thing we need to do is contact other entities, other cities, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, San Diego. How do they name their buildings? What do they have a process? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's go ahead and find out how they do it. And it might be a good first step at an approach on how to do that.
Okay. Thank you. All good points, excellent points. Any
That's
questions?
good. Tell us something to the report.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of activity around these reports, because it's departments large and small, but I'm wondering who should be the entity or department that should be perhaps touching base with most, if not all, of these departments. You bring up a good point, Reggie. For example, street services. You know, I'm assuming that they're in charge of putting up a sign when somehow, some way, somebody says we're dedicating this median to, some local wonderful person who dedicated their life to keeping that median or what have you. And so they're probably tasked with having to order the sign, put it up, or what have you. But they need to have a process that people need to approach them with to show them that they're following a process. Again, even in a situation like that, was the family consulted? I think that's a perfect example of one of the things that needs to be on everyone's checklist, that there be some uniformity on certain elements of what every department and every potential dedication or naming is going to have to go through. So with that, the committee is going to instruct GSD and the city attorney's office to CLA, CAO, it's broad, it's everybody. So CLA, CAO, those four entities to take the lead in making sure that any and all departments, proprietary, council-controlled departments, are notified that we need a report back on them providing procedures and standards within their purview and their departments. And I think GSD, what you're probably going to end up doing is referring perhaps to some of these departments that hardly ever deal with this, and perhaps helping them with like a blueprint that most of the larger departments have developed when it comes to their checklist. So unless you think that maybe some of those small departments you guys hardly deal with, or I'm assuming you guys pretty much have relationships with almost everybody.
Everybody that's council controlled and
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
Yeah, but the non-council controlled are all huge anyway, so they're not hiding anywhere. They're going to be up front and center. Yeah. That was reminding me that sometimes communication within departments is kind of difficult. So that's where we get the CAO and the CLA involved in making sure that everybody comes to the table and everybody's ready to.
They could convene it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
Mhm.
Not that GSD's in
No, it's better to have CAO, CLA. I'll say it.
Very busy.
So
I'm still waiting for my inventory on all the government-owned properties in the Civic Center.
make sure she gets it again.
Again, no.
Because obviously she doesn't. You're saying she has it. She's saying she doesn't. Nothing like giving her another copy. Maybe you want to hand it to her directly. Again, communication is important, even if it's sign language or what have you. So with that, we'll clarify that the instruction will be CLA, CAO to convene all the relevant departments, proprietary, council-controlled departments, to let them know that we are expecting that they report back to this committee with some standard procedures and policy. The city attorney, obviously, if there's any obstacles or anything that we need to be warned about, for example, that the charter may speak to, that treats the proprietaries differently than the council-controlled, et cetera, please apprise everybody of that so that we don't, unfortunately, have something that brought forward that they spend a lot of time on that's irrelevant to their particular department. Sure, absolutely.
Mark Brown, Senior Assistant City Attorney. In reviewing the motion, when we first saw it, we noticed that it intended to address Recreation and Parks and the Library Department, the proprietary departments as well. And the charter does have specific limitations with regard to those departments. They have more control over their own property and more control over the ability to name. So if the committee would like a report back, of course, those departments can report back, but there are some more specific limitations that allow those departments to have a little bit more freedom. And
But the charter doesn't speak to them, not that we cannot have them have a standard procedure that they have to follow.
No, it doesn't.
Right?
No.
Okay. And that's what this motion speaks to as well.
Right.
Is so that we have less headaches and less people getting up in arms or having legitimate concerns, and a simple question at the end of the process. By the way, did you talk to the family?
Yes.
That's a perfect example. Whether they have that authority or not,
Yes. No,
procedures
understood.
still need to be in place.
Understood. And speaking for Rec and Parks, the department that I liaison with, they do have a policy, so they'll be able to report back on
We
it.
can start with that.
They do come back, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. If you find a policy, CLA, CAO, in your survey, in gathering the information, one that has maybe a question in there about naming and historical context, so that we can avoid future drama by just putting it out there on the report of the application or whatever, and then, obviously, ultimately, the deliberative body will make a decision on how they interpret the information they're given. But everybody gets the same information, and without rancor.
Without too much rank.
Well, yeah, a minimal amount, but
Yeah.
some is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's inevitable some.
because it's more fun that way.
So So thank you for that clarification. So with that, that'll be an instruction, but I need a feel for how long do you think, a year? I was thinking less than that. You kidding?
Not say a year.
Would it, 90 days, 120 days? I mean, right now, as we stand, once we get to 120 days or so, then it's budget cycle, so everybody's, pulling their hair out.
Councilman, I think we'd like to shoot for 90 days, if that's okay, because it sounds like there's going to be a lot of research and reaching out, not just to all the departments, but other municipalities as well, as it was suggested. So if we could have 90 days, that would be great.
Sure. Okay, so the report back, as stated, within 90 days. And at the same time, I want to encourage everybody to understand that sharing of information or recommendations or what have you early on is really going to be helpful. It'd be kind of silly for a department to feel all happy that they reinvented the wheel and then all of a sudden they see that it's almost identical to something somebody said, we've had this for a long time. And so the sharing of information, of procedures for those departments that have already established some, but please keep in mind that whatever procedures may have existed for months or years perhaps could be improved anyway. So it's a perfect opportunity for every department, whether they have procedures in place or not, to review that and then to improve upon it. Is there anybody here from the public to speak on item number 9? On item number 9. Public comment is open on item number 9. Seeing and hearing no one come forward on public comment on item number 9. Public comment is now closed. So with that, we'll, as we instructed, we'll get a report back to this committee in 90 days. Okay, thank you. Item number 10.
Item number 10 is a motion, Rosendahl-Koretz, relative to directing the ITA's LA City View 35 to work with AIDS Watch producers to make the city's billboard channel available to broadcast the AIDS Watch program on December 1, 2009.
Anybody here? 35. Do you understand what the motion is asking?
Yes, good afternoon, council members. Tony Agani with ITA Channel 35 and working with
Nate Kaplan from Councilman Bill Rosenthal's office.
Okay.
On December 1st is recognized around the globe as World's AIDS Awareness Day. And currently in West Hollywood, what they do is on December 1st air approximately 18,000 AIDS victims who have passed away on their screen. It's just a black background with white lettering spelling out their names. It kind of fades out every 3 seconds. It goes on to a new name. Every year it starts with Councilman Rosenthal's former partner who passed away several years ago from AIDS is always the first name. So it has a personal effect to the councilman. And so we're asking right now that you approve this and give Channel 35 permission to work with the organizers from West Hollywood to do that on our very own Channel 35 billboard station.
Okay. So basically the content has already been established. It's just a matter of airing that content on Channel 35 on.
Actually, it's our currently the city controls another channel, which is the bulletin board channel. It's not Channel 35. It would be impossible for us to preempt 24 hours of programming. So the billboard channel is the channel we recommended, which would be very easy to accommodate this request, and it will be mainly important to point out that it will be cost neutral to the city, and there won't be any programming impact.
Okay. So, Mr. Rosendahl, the maker of the motion, understands that it's the billboard channel that we'd be using?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. All right.
Okay, I think it's great.
All right. Okay, no more questions from the committee. It looks like everything should be in order. Do we have a placeholder in council for this?
We don't, but it could go next Tuesday to
Yeah,
council if
as
you
soon as
want.
possible, because December 1st is rolling around the corner.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's a short week.
Yeah.
All right.
So November 24th.
Okay, November 24th, we'll see it on the council floor. Is there anybody here to make public comment on item number 10? Item number 10, public comment is now open on item number 10. Seeing and hearing no one come forward, public comment is now closed. So with that, if the committee adopts the motion and we will calendar this for Tuesday, what date is that?
And November 24th.
November 24th, Tuesday of the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. We're now item number 11.
Item number 11 is a report from the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to city sponsorship and/or support for legislation regarding adoption of policies by school district and municipal governments for the management of concussion and head injuries in youth sports pursuant to Resolution Parks Labange.
Good afternoon. Darrell Powell with the CLA's office. On April 15, 2009, a Parks Labange resolution was introduced indicating that the state of Washington had introduced legislation 1824 requiring the adoption of policies for municipal governments and school districts for the management of concussion and other head-related injuries in youth sports. In May 2009, the bill was enacted, and also we found out that the bill directs school districts to require a statement of compliance with policies regarding the nature and risks of concussions and head injuries, including the risks associated with continuing to play after an injury. In our research, we found out in contacting the Center for Disease Control and Prevention that more than 3.5 million sports-related concussions happen each year. Our Department of Recreation and Parks operates various programs where youth play contact sports such as football, baseball, and soccer. Guidelines and other pertinent information should be developed to inform and educate coaches, athletes, and their parents and guardians of the nature and the risk of concussions and other head injuries. On May 15, 2009, an additional motion was introduced, instructing and directing the city attorney, with the assistance of the Department of Recreation and Parks, the CAO, and the Chief Legislative Analyst to report on specific laws that are in place that serve to limit city liability if sport injuries occur on city-owned property. Additionally, the City Council also asked to be informed of any ordinances that should be enacted to hold the city harmless in such situations. The Office of the City Attorney, which is here, is preparing a report on this matter to be submitted under separate cover. The report will address potential city liability concerns.
John Wickham with the CLA. So our recommendation is to seek sponsorship or support of legislation that would do this. There currently are no bills in the state legislature on this subject matter. I just wanted to remind you that there is a deadline coming up with the state legislature when their session begins again in January. There's a deadline at the end of January for legislators to request the LAO to prepare to draft language. And so if we're to find a legislator who'd be willing to carry this legislation, we would, when you start to back up, we need to take a city position on this early in January so that we can find somebody who can do this. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of some of the timelines.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great. Very interesting problem.
Yeah, it's something that unfortunately people take for granted, that kids get hurt or what have you, but what people don't realize is that there's a lot of families out there that unfortunately don't have health care. They remedy things with a piece of aspirin or something like that, and they don't realize that they should really have a greater awareness, and we need to do what we can to make sure that our facilities notify the families and the parents so that they can increase the chances of there not be long-term effects when it comes to children hitting their heads and having head injuries. Looking at who the authors are, maybe they played a little too much in the park when they were kids.
Yeah, without a helmet.
That explains it.
With a soft helmet.
I've been wondering though.
Yeah, no, that does explain it.
They had leather helmets back then.
Yes. Yes, they did.
So with that, and we appreciate your recommendation and reminder of the timeline in the state legislature. I'm sure we can find a legislator to carry it. We have at least one former council member who claims to play sports when he was growing up, who's now in the legislature. So with that, is there anybody here to speak on item number 11? We're on item number 11. Is anybody here to speak to item number 11 on public comment? Seeing and hearing none. Public comment is now closed on item number 11. So with that, what we'll do is we'll adopt the resolution and instruct the CAO, Recreation and Parks, City Attorney to report back to the committee. How soon? What kind of time do you need?
Well, our report, which I think there may be separate reports. There's policy implications in the motion, and there's the legal advice that we would provide on the questions asked. And so our report, I think I'm in the final stages of putting it together. We've already done the research, and we're just writing it up. So we plan to have that report available in early December sometime. So.
Okay. All right. So what we'll do is we'll look to those reports the last week before we break in December. What date would that be? Christmas, 24, like the 19th or something like that?
14th or 15th? February, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay.
December 15th would be the last meeting for this committee.
Okay. So we anticipate
report out before then.
having those reports ready for this committee on the 15th of December. Okay. So that's the action of the committee, that adoption, and the request of those reports.
And for clarification, do you want the resolution to go forward to council with the instruction to report back? Okay, thank you.
That way, that'll assist us in getting a legislator to carry it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 12.
And item number 12 is a motion from Koretz Han relative to directing the Department of General Services to report on the viability of placing hand sanitizing equipment outside of city building elevators and hallways and in the lobbies of large offices.
Loretta Quinnen.
That's a lot of
Custodial Services,
hand
General
sanitizer.
Services.
That's a lot of hand sanitizer.
It's a lot of hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Wow.
Didn't bring any today.
I understand the impetus for this, and I understand we're a public facility, or lots of public facilities. But the first thing that comes to mind to me is, how do we do this? First thing that comes to mind is the quantity of these.
It would be quite massive. The startup cost would be very costly. Obviously, outfitting any structure initially. We have a vendor that will provide the dispensers at a no charge if we buy the product from them. So, and that's standard. They will provide the dispensers, at least the wall mount dispensers, free of charge as long as we buy the product for them. And that is standard in the industry for chemical custodial products. So, it runs about $10 per unit that goes into these dispensers. They will serve you about 800 to 1,000 squirts. I wouldn't say necessarily uses, because people tend to squirt twice. You know, you can never, you know, count for how many.
Quantify the usage.
Yes, exactly. So, and again, and depending on, you know, if you are saying hallways, quantifying what size are we talking about with large lobbies, you know, offices with large lobbies, things like that. Clearly, I think it prudent in the elevators and entrances, obviously lobby entrances, you know, expanding it above and beyond that is the determination of fundings, and the division doesn't have funding for this. We're certainly handling the test phase. We have 3 orders in for products and dispensers. The City Hall building will have to be stand dispensers, since we can't mount things on the wall. So that's something that we're buying.
Because of the historical nature of the
Correct. And I can have more data once I get you know, a semblance of how many bags of those products I'm going through each day in each building, and clearly in your high rises, that's going to be.
So right now, we're basically in the fact-finding / pilot stage.
Correct.
I was at Essence campus, and they have the wall mounts and actually freestanding equipment, and because they've had a couple of cases of H1N1 down there.
How often, from your anecdotal experience, how far apart were they? Were they by the elevators, the entrances?
They were by the elevators and things like that, and I was, you know, walking on campus, but I was in a couple of buildings, UPKC, and a couple of other buildings, and I saw them by the elevators, and I don't know if it was in every single building. I didn't check in the dorms or anything like that, but maybe we could have a little pilot, maybe pick recreation and park facilities and libraries first, or places where there's a lot of people in and out, higher concentrations of people. There's not so many people coming in and out of, say, the public works yards as there are coming out of, parks every day from neighborhoods and staff and all that. Maybe we can try it like that.
Yeah, the child care centers, the libraries.
Maybe the areas where there's higher risk populations.
Yes.
But you mentioned that you possibly may be able to absorb the cost related to trying it out.
This trial cost, we've already placed these orders. There is a long lead time on these products because of the H1N1 virus.
Can we get any money from the county? Or is that impossible?
I hadn't thought of it.
Well, they were complaining in the paper about the lack of outreach in certain communities that are at higher risk. I just wonder maybe they had some money to help us do this.
They should.
The first two categories of high-risk people are younger people, 18 to 24, and then seniors, because you and I are not in the first tier, we're in the lower tier. We live long enough that we may have an immunity to it. So maybe we can target that, see if the county has any.
Certainly will.
Maybe we can compete for.
Yeah, it's a health issue. So
The only other limitation that that I see would be in the buildings that General Services does not supply custodial services to, and then we would have no mechanism with which to get in and change the product once it's empty.
We would have to modify the contract with that particular service provider, right?
Well,
if they were going to,
our custodians would be changing out the product.
No, but you're talking about the ones where.
If you were to roll this out, if the decision to roll this out was made to all public facilities, then it would be our custodians that would be charged with changing this out if the funding was identified and done. And then the limitation that I see then is our custodians don't service all 600 of the city's buildings. We only service about 300 of them. So.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Who services those other 300?
Well, the fire stations, they do their own.
But basically what you're describing for us is somebody other than General Services would have to implement in those 300 facilities unless we figured out a way to get General Services to do so, which again requires more resources.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. If we're not going into those buildings, that would be expensive.
Okay. How long before you have feedback from your current process?
We should have the units up before December 1st. And then I would like to do a month of testing. I think we'd get better data. It's difficult being in December because it's not
then why don't we do this? Let's
a well-populated month.
Let's look at December, January. So maybe in the middle of February you can give us some feedback on what you experienced.
Now, would you want me to expand the test beyond City Hall East and City Hall and do it in one of the libraries?
At least one of the libraries. That's a good sample.
Okay.
It'll produce a good sample. I'd rather Central to me is
it's
kind of
so
like a
big. It's such an anomaly.
Yeah, it's an anomaly.
Yeah. We'll pick
library.
one of the one of the branch libraries and
the community.
Yeah. And and we'll have a better feel. We can calculate out some costs from there once we get some usage data.
Okay. All right. So with that, we'll hold the item in committee and wait for the results in February.
Okay.
I don't see any reason to move the item forward because
We're not gonna move yet.
we're not going to move yet. We may find out that it's such a massive undertaking that we probably won't be able to implement.
Maybe the virus will have transmuted something.
Well, guaranteed there will be another one next year and the next year.
Not that this won't still kill whatever it mutates.
Exactly.
Yeah, whatever's out there.
Okay. All right, so that's item number 12. Is anybody here to make public comment on item number 12? Seeing and hearing none, public comment on item number 12 is now closed. With that, hold that item in committee and expect to report back by the middle of February at the latest. And that concludes all the items on the agenda, correct? Okay, so that concludes all the scheduled items on the agenda. Is there anybody here to speak general public comment to this committee? General public comment, thank you, to this committee is open. Seeing and hearing no one come forward on general public comment to this committee. General public comment is now closed. With that, this committee is now adjourned.